The following slides are some examples of my own research into costume in 19th century Philadelphia to go along with the article Commodified Craft, Creative Community, Women's Vernacular Dress in 19th Century Philadelphia. And in particular, I'll be focusing on examples from the costume collection at the Germantown Historical Society and some other primary sources that I looked at to show you the actual dresses that were part of the examples discussed in this article. Here's a cotton day dress from 1850, and this in particular is a new bodice constructed over an old lining pattern. So you can see that there is the silhouette of an earlier dress form, which would have been a higher waisted 1830s dress, and then over that we have shirred fabric and bell sleeves that are laid over that initial lining pattern. And we also see that there is addition of fabric added to the waist and the inside in order to make the longer waisted bodice of the later style. The article also mentioned women in altering dresses for varying stages of life. This is an example of a dress where the bodice interior was actually altered to expand the waistline, and we see that particularly on this other side here that an additional inch has been added on each side, and there's a gap in the lining. You can see on the right where the initial hooks were, and then that there's been additional fabric on the outside and additional lining, different fabric lining placed. This shows that women were definitely recycling, altering, changing dresses to go along with their different life cycle. The article also talks about the way in which women shared patterns. Here are two sisters, the Ziegler sisters, who definitely shared a dress pattern for zouave bodice, which was very popular in the 1850s and 60s. This is the actual sketch of the bodice design. And you can see it's very similar to this day dress, which is from a different museum collection. Again, a very popular style. Here are two sisters who have recycled the same dress. On the left, Ida is wearing the dress, and then which was later remade for Rose Sarah with a different skirt. This could have been done for any number of reasons, to change the style, or if the skirt fabric had been damaged or stained, to, again, reuse and recycle the dress. Here's the example of a red day dress with a bodice that was altered. Initially would have had a full fronted bodice that was then cut open and then a lace insert placed. This could have been done for any number of reasons, but I have a sense that the dress was remade from an earlier style, and then the bodice front and cap sleeve elaborations were added at a later date. So here we see here where the lace insert was placed, and probably to mimic some of these very similar styles with the deep V in the front. And you can see how during this period the full front and then also the opened V with a lace or muslin insert was a very common style during this period. Again, women would have refreshed the style of their dresses without remaking a whole new dress. Also, women would have remade dresses, which we can see sometimes in existing surviving costumes with the remnants of stitching marks where stitches were taken out or where fabric was pieced together. And in this case, from 1840, we have a day dress where the bodice front was changed, and specifically we can see that fabric was taken off of the dress, or perhaps a remnant from its former incarnation, and then pieced together and pleated to be more in the style of the shirred front dresses of this period. And you'll see here the piecing of the bodice front. This would have been on each side. And then, of course, the piecing of the sleeve, which in this case seems to have both been a piecing to create the sleeve and then perhaps later with this little patch, a repair. again showing the way in which fabric was recycled, was conserved as well. And this is just another example of a museum collection dress, which is very similar in style to the dress that I was looking at. And then the other thing that we definitely see is women not just kind of refreshing their dresses within a specific period, but also remaking dresses as styles changed. This is an interesting dress, which was originally dated at 1855-1860, but which was likely remade at a later date. But at any rate, we're talking about somebody who is changing their dress from a full skirted dress, which would have been a style in the 1850s and early 1860s, to accommodate a bustle in the back, and then which was eventually became a different silhouette. And so what they did in order to do this is they took the skirt off and they cut panels into the front to gore it, to make it kind of more of an A-line in the front, and then they refocused all of the gathers into the back of the dress. So this is the original dress, I think, would have been very much like this, with the yoke and then the full skirt. Then they gored the front here, and then gathered all of the gathers into the back, which would have been to accommodate a bustle. And so we see an overall change in silhouette from a full crinoline skirt to a bustled skirt. And this, of course, is very consistent with the changing styles in the 1850s and the 1860s, where we see a movement of the gathering of the skirt to the back to accommodate a bustle, and then eventually the front skirt being very, very straight with a full bustle in the back. So this dress would have been somewhere in between that period. So this is just a few examples of dresses that I looked at and to reconstruct how women might have remade, refashioned, and shared patterns and ideas about dress design during the middle of the 19th century.